Hi everybody, welcome to All Games New and Old. I am David Rodriguez, and today we're going to be reviewing Catharsis. This was published in 2022 by Cyber Wizard Games and was designed by Art Gregory and David Tomczyk. Now it's a game set in a fantasy world, so here to talk about it is Morkpork M'Gorkbork, the Orc Lord. Take it away, Bork.
In this game, your adventurers hunting down creatures who've been tainted by the evil corruption of an evil god. It's one of the worst things you can possibly have to deal with.
Oh really? Do you have experience with that?
Oh yes. Nothing is worse than when everything is tainted. That's why I use Taint Away, the world's only 100% effective taint cleaner.
Wait, are you doing a commercial?
Look at this fork. It looks like it's been way too long in the taint. But a couple sprays, and look at that! No taint is powerful enough to resist Taint Away. It's so powerful you can even spray it right on your...
Well, okay, that's enough of that. Let's get our gameplay overview. Alright, so let me give you a rundown of how Catharsis is played. First off, everyone who's playing is going to pick a character. Anyone will work, it's just fine. Make sure you set aside the roll card. It'll tell you any special setup instructions for your character, and then you're going to shuffle the rest of your deck and deal out 6 face up. Those are going to be your starting set of skills for the game. Then you're also going to want to pick your boss. So they all have their own separate deck too. So pull one of those out that you think looks interesting, put the main boss card aside, make sure that it's on the bottom of the deck you're about to create, shuffle up those cards, and put it right on top of that boss card to make sure that you are fighting the boss last. But do make sure you check the boss card to see if there's any other special setup instructions. There are a few of them that work a little differently. Then you are going to put your counter on the morale track in accordance with whatever difficulty you want to start with. To be honest, we've been playing it at the easiest possible difficulty and still found it pretty challenging a lot of the time. But, you know, do whatever you think is best for you. So at the beginning of the round, you are going to flip over the boss card that is on the top of the deck and read aloud what it says and then follow its instructions. If it's a monster, you'll likely be in a fight, but it could be a trap or any other sort of event as well. If it is something that you have to fight, you're going to take your dice, which you should have 6 of, and you are going to roll them. And you're trying to match those die faces with some of the skills on your cards. Now, for most characters, they have a skill on the top and the bottom of each card, and usually you can only pick one of those to use. Now, once you've done your first roll, you may decide that you don't quite have what you want yet. You can re-roll up to 2 times, really any of the dice you've rolled so far, hoping to get the exact dice you need. Once you do have some dice that'll let you do a skill, you put those on the card and enact the action, whatever it might be. You'll then flip over the card of the skill you used, and that's going to stay upside down for a bit. If there's any dice that you don't use, those don't carry over into the next round. You simply don't get to use them. Now, you and the people you're playing with can all enact actions in whatever order you want. So if it makes more sense for someone to your right to do their action before you do yours, you can certainly do it that way. You don't have to go around the table in any specific order. Once everyone has rolled their dice, assuming that there is still a bad guy left to fight, it will then attack you according to the rules it says on its card. Now, if something does damage to you, it will either flip over one of your skills, if there's any that are available to be flipped over to the back side of it. If, however, there aren't enough to flip over that way, one of your skills that you've turned upside down will be put out of the game. Essentially, you've taken permanent damage unless you come across a card later on that will let you bring some skills back to your tableau. You'll never have more than 6, but you can get down where you have fewer. After you've resolved the enemy phase, or you've resolved whatever the event or trap is that you have, you can then, if you want to, choose to spend a morale point, and that will refresh all of your cards. That includes your character card, which has some abilities of its own. One is usually a passive ability that will just always be going, and one is one that you have to flip your character card over to use, but that can be refreshed just like your other ones can. Now you have to watch out because as you go down the morale tracker, it'll eventually start doing bad things to you. You'll get damage from it. It may take more moves down the morale track to refresh your cards. It's really dangerous because as you get towards the end, it can be a little bit scary. If you ever run out of morale entirely, you lose the game. If your character is completely defeated, you lose as well. The idea, though, is you want to get through the entire boss deck, dealing with all the encounters until you finally get to the final card, which should be the boss. Then you want to fight the boss and hopefully win. Obviously, if it defeats you, you lose. And that's really it. That's the basic gist of Catharsis. Not a super complicated game to learn, but hopefully you have an idea now. So let's go to our actual review, and we'll start with the art and components. All right, so that's an overview of how you play Catharsis. This is our dog, Oreo. Say hi, Oreo. She won't do that. But there she is. So we're going to talk about our opinions on this game now, starting with art and components. And I think we should start with art first, because there's a lot to say about components, I feel. Yeah. So let's do art first. Go ahead.
All right. I do enjoy the art with this game. It's a very dark theme. It's not gory, but definitely on the darker side. There are some characters that are a little over-sexualized, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. I don't think it's too bad, but there's definitely a lot of cleavage. I think there's one character that is kind of posed a little bit over-sexualized too, but for the most part, it's okay. Yeah,
I mean, I think the art is gorgeous. I think it's really beautiful. It's the thing that really drew me to this game when it was on Kickstarter. And when I first looked at it, I kind of looked at it and passed it by, and I just kept going back and looking at it. It just kept drawing me in every time I saw it. And so, very beautiful. I agree. There's at least a couple characters who, very cleavagey, that sort of thing. For the most part, they're not in weird, sexy poses. But on the inside box, on one of the sides, there's like it's kind of like all fours, kind of needlessly sexy pic. That's like the most egregious one. I think most of the rest of it is not too bad, but everyone, we'll be showing you the art as we talk about this, so you can decide for yourself. But certainly not the worst I've seen, but it's there. If it bothers you in any degree, then you should know about that. It is what it is. There's a couple things about the graphic design that kind of bothered me. When you're going through the boss deck, some of them will have maybe a trap or an event or something, and it'll say roll a die, and if you roll a 1 or 2, this happens, and a 3 or 4, whatever. And it'll show little dice facings on there. And wow. Okay, so the die it shows is really super tiny. Really, 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 really tiny. And it's like a black die with dark gray pips. I'm not kidding. I'd get my phone flashlight and look. And okay, I'm 45, so whatever. My eyes are not perfect, but if you have young hawk-like vision, maybe it's not a problem. I could see that the pips were there, but I was like, is that 3? Is that 5? I don't know. I can't. Way too small. Way too small.
Yeah, I think even the size is okay if they just would have chosen better colors. If they just would have used your regular white die with black pips, it would have been fine. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the choice that the coloring choice they made makes it hard to read.
Yeah, for sure. And then on the character, your skill cards or powers cards, whatever they're called, some of the things you look for, instead of having a die pip face on there, will have AA or BB or question mark, and it does mean various things, which I talked about in the how to play. But each character seems to have their own font, and they could be very thin, the way they're written, and it'll be a dark gray writing on a light gray background, and some of them it's wait, is that the question mark or is that the A? Again, okay, eyes, but my eyes aren't terrible, they're not awful.
Yeah.
And some of them I found really hard to read. Did you have any trouble with that? Because I had a lot.
I didn't have a huge problem with the AB question mark. What did throw me off and sometimes got me confused, because I would think it was part of the AB question mark, is each character has its own symbol for the 1 pip. And so, I was especially when we were first playing, I was like, well, what does this symbol mean? Because I know what the AB question mark means. What does this symbol mean? And so that confused me. Even after I got used to that representing the 1 pip, there are still sometimes, I think there are some characters that, it the symbol they chose is really close to the font that they used for the AB question mark. So
Yeah, I know the first time I played through solo, like I'd probably seen that rule, but I think it skimmed over it. I just didn't remember that. And so, like, the character I was playing, I was like, what does it want me to roll here? What is that? How do I get that? Does that mean, like, do I have to get, like, a combination? I didn't know what that little bizarre symbol meant. And it's in there. It's in the rule book, but I don't know why it was necessary to do that. To be honest with you, it's a little strange.
Yeah.
It's fine, I guess, but...
it makes sense if there was individual dice for each character, but there's not.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and like I don't know if that was like maybe a stretch goal or something that they just didn't hit. I'm not sure, but either way, it's just something to be aware of. It's not the end of the world, but I totally overlooked that when I was first reading through it, so it threw me off. I thought I was missing some detail that was I was missing some. Anyway, yeah. So there's that. So we're gonna talk about the components now. And I'll give you, I liked this game, okay? Like, when we played it afterwards, I was like, this is fun. I liked it. And I think we both said something like that. And then we spent like 30 minutes talking about things we didn't like about the components.
yeah.
So we're not going to spend 30 minutes this time. We're going to try to sum it
We're
up.
going to condense down what our
We're going to
thoughts
condense
were.
it down. Yeah, so you go ahead.
So I feel like they made some weird design choices with the components, and the biggest design choice that they made with the components that I don't understand is with the cards themselves. The cards are extremely large. They're about the size of a postcard. They're thinner than a postcard, so it makes the cards seem really flimsy. And while this isn't a deck builder where you're constantly shuffling them, you do have to shuffle them at the beginning of the game. And because they're so big, it makes it really difficult to do that. The other issue with the size of them is that the game ends up taking a lot of room on your table space. And we have a fairly large gaming table now, but there was only 2 of us playing. I can't imagine if we had 4 people playing this game. And so that makes it difficult. Because of the size of the cards, the box is incredibly big, and so storing that box, you're not going to be able to get on a regular game shelf. And then because of the size of the cards and the size of the box, I feel like it's adding a lot of unnecessary cost to the game.
Yeah, when I was looking at the Kickstarter, I'm sure I saw that there was large size cards, and I probably thought, oh, that's cool because you'll be able to see like the cool art a lot better, and you probably can't. That's probably true. But I wasn't really thinking about what this meant for, especially the storage. Honestly, the size of the cards I could deal with if it wasn't for the storage thing. The thickness, that might have been a stretch goal they didn't hit. I'm not sure. That kind of thing often is, so maybe it could have been thicker cards and it just didn't get there. I don't know. But it makes the box freaking gigantic, it's way too big to fit on a Calyx shelf for sure. It's got this tray where you slide the different decks for each character and each boss in there. They're each given enough room so that if you get the sleeves, you can fit those in there, which is cool if you want to sleeve your cards. The problem is that when you have all the components in there, the space between your components and the top of the box is maybe an inch. So not only can you not fit it on one of these shelves, you have to store it horizontally. If you store this vertically, it's all going to dump out into the box. And if you go watch my unboxing of this, because, I went through shipping, it was all kinds of crazy. When I pulled it open, you saw those decks, thankfully, all were wrapped. That would have been terrible if they weren't. Or, all over the place in there. And that's what's going to happen if you dare turn this thing horizontal. And I don't know why they did that. The only thing I can think is because there are playmats that you can get for it. Maybe, I don't know if this is true, by the way, so don't buy them thinking that I'm right about this, because I don't know. Maybe you could take those playmats and put them in that box. Maybe there's room for a couple of them. I'm not sure. Maybe. But what I don't understand is, that, like I said, all the cards are in one big tray. I wish what they would have done, because the heroes take up one side and the bosses take up the other side for the most part. There's a few weird things, but I wish they would have made it 2 trays that stack on top of each other, one with the heroes, one with the bosses that you could pull out, and for one thing, it'd be easier to look through and get everything. And then they could make the box, it'd be thicker or taller, I guess, but they could have made it fit on a shelf that you might have in your house. And they could bring the box lid down so that it's up against that stuff so that you could store it whichever way suits you. That would have been real wise, because it's just a pain in the butt. Like, it looks cool. When I read about it in the Kickstarter, it sounded fine. It's a bit of a nuisance.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like, I think they could have shrunk down the cards. Maybe not even to, like, regular playing card side, but it could have been smaller. If they're worried about getting your dice on your card, like, they could have just said, instead of, because most of the characters, their powers on the cards, like, they'll have one on the top and one on the bottom. Instead of having you fit them on there, they could have said, well, put those above or below the card you're going to use and mark it that way. Like,
yeah, they could have easily done that. And also the dice that they used are kind of bigger dice anyway, so they could have used just regular size D6s, and then the smaller cards that you could have still fit the dice on there. So
yeah.
The one component that I do actually really like a lot is the morale track board.
Oh, that is cool.
Because the board and the tracker are magnetic, so like even though it's not recessed, it still stays in place. So you're not gonna bump into the morale track and lose where you were at.
Yeah, I absolutely adore that. It is phenomenal. It's amazing. The dice, we talked about if they had individual ones for each player. I don't know if that was a stretch goal thing or not. It wouldn't shock me, but I don't know. They're really just regular, bigger size, just, clear, one color with white pips, pretty regular dice. So they're not super interesting. They work fine. They're good. They're not bad quality or anything like that, but, nothing fancy. They just are what they are. It'd be cool if they were something fancy, but it would have made it more expensive, so whatever. You could buy fancy dice from them if you want.
But if the cards and boxes were smaller, then they would have more money for...
That's probably true. Yeah, seriously, that box, if you look at that, you think, oh man, that must be like some super miniatures heavy game, like, I don't know, Descent, or even Descent's box smaller than that. Yeah, but you'd swear that's probably the kind of game it is, right? It must have like trays and trays of miniatures and room tiles, and it's cards. It's a lot of big cards. That's what it is.
And dice.
And dice. But, So, anyway, I don't want to keep harping on it. Just know, if you think you're going to put it on your game shelf in the way you usually put games, it's going to be horizontal. It's going to be on a different kind of shelf or on top of your game shelf. You're not putting it somewhere else. Not going to happen. Alright, so, talking about theme. So, this game looks, on paper, like it's light dice throwing, and so you think, well, this probably is not going to be a very thematic thing. It's just going to be like some silly, let's roll some dice and, whatever, we'll fight some beasties, and that'll be that.
And it's co-op, so...
And it's co-op, and yeah. No, my friends. This is a very thematic game. Very, very, very thematic, I think. Each character plays differently, and based on the type of character they are, you can really feel that with the powers they have. Like, some of them are very support. I played a bard guy who is sort of like this jack of all trades, and even the way his powers work were cool, because instead of having a power on the top and the bottom and you'd flip it once you use it, like, you would use a power and then you'd turn the card 90 degrees, because it's all songs, and so now you're at the next part of the song, and when you use that one, you turn it again, and so, like, it made sense. You're singing through all your songs, and really cool. So much thematic stuff there. Some characters more so than others. And then the bosses, each one has its own deck, and each card in that box has like a paragraph of flavor text as to what's happening in the situation you've come across. Wow, like, it really feels like every boss is different, and the things you're experiencing are different. Even though I'm sure if I really looked at it, you could boil it down to, well, we're going to fight this beast now, and we're going to roll these dice, and it's going to do this back, and oh, here's a trap, let's roll a die. I guess you could look at it that way, but because of there being so many cards in the boss deck, and like, I guess the proportions that they do those things in, like some bosses are going to probably be more trap heavy, and some things are going to hurt you more this way instead of that way, and it's awesome. Like, I really felt like, oh my gosh, like, we were tracking this thing down, and oh no, they pinned us down with this trick they pulled or whatever, you know what I mean? I really found it to be heavily thematic. Like, I feel like I'm on this adventure when I do it, and I was shocked because I wasn't expecting it to be to the degree that I found it to be. But I am a very theme person. Yeah. I'm very heavily theme guy. So you being a little bit less so, like, I mean, did you feel the same, or was that all just kind of like fluff to you, and you're like, whatever?
The theme is definitely in the boss deck. I don't really feel the theme as much in the characters that you play. It's there a little bit where it's like, you know, you can kind of feel it, you know, like if you're more an attack, defense, or support character. And there's some characters that definitely have a lot more theme built into it. The barb had a lot of theme to it. Mm-hmm. I played a farmer that had spores, and that was very kind of heavy themed. You know, and so, like, certain characters had a lot of theme to them. I don't think all the characters that you play as had a heavy theme. But that being said, you know, the bosses, you definitely have, like, especially with each card in that boss deck, having a good paragraph of flavor text at the top of each card, you definitely can get immersed into that theme. Even to some extent, like, if you're someone that kind of skips over flavor text, honestly, if I was playing this by myself, I'd be skipping over quite a bit of the flavor text. But that's because of my dyslexia, and I just don't, like, if I don't have to read, I don't want to.
Fair enough.
So, you know, I might, like, kind of skim over it, but I won't, like, read over every single... I'll kind of skim over it, but I wouldn't, like, sit there and read the flavor text a lot, especially if it feels like it's starting to kind of repeat itself. But even with that, I feel like the way you fight the monsters still pulls you into the theme. Like, the assassin, she's popping out and attacking you, and then she runs away, and then she pops out again. And so you're fighting her constantly throughout, and then at the end, when you finally get to the big boss of her version of her, you know, depending on how many times you fought her, it can either make it harder or easier. And, you know, with the vermin, like, a lot of the monsters you fought were vermin-esque, or, you know, like, you couldn't feel like you were being overrun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one was neat, because it's not, like, for the most part, when you fought the vermin lord, like, the creatures weren't necessarily a tough fight, but you're taking a lot more morale damage, and you can't run out of morale because you'll die. Like, it was more about wearing down your resolve.
Yeah.
And I love that assassin, because I forget what the exact thing was, but at the end, like, the idea is that, okay, well, she's learned about you as she's been stalking you and playing cat and mouse with you, but you've also learned about her, so there was things that could, like, you could use to your benefit, or it could also be to your detriment in some way too. So it was really fascinating how they did it. She's actually, of the ones we played, I think she's my favorite, just because I really felt with her, like, oh, this is doing what it's saying it's doing. Yeah. It's really awesome. So now I'm curious, because I would usually say, if you're the kind of person who just straight up skips flavor text, I don't know if this game is for you, because I don't know if you would get that same feeling going through the boss. I mean, I don't know. You might still enjoy it. I don't know. But do you think that this game would be fun for someone who skips flavor text?
I do. Okay. I think that there's enough going on in the game, and that, like I said, that each boss plays differently. If the bosses kind of played the same, but the flavor text was just it, like, if the flavor text was the only thing that was different about the bosses, then I don't think it would be. But each boss plays differently, each character plays differently, so there's a lot of different variables that, even if you're not fully immersed in the flavor text, I think it still plays so differently that you can still enjoy it without the flavor text. I think you'll enjoy it more with the flavor text, but if you're someone that does kind of skip over that, like, it's still an enjoyable game.
I'll take your word for it. I can't even imagine. I can't imagine playing this without looking at the flavor text. I mean, and it's not all because of the flavor text. Like, it needs that background of the game too, but to me it's so integrated that I'm just like, I can't look. Let's get the flavor text. Are you crazy?
I start getting a wah, 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 through the
that's like
flavor text.
It's like having a chicken dinner but skipping the cooking part. That's not a really good analogy, but
No.
I was trying to think of something horrible, and that's what I came up with. So there you go.
Maybe because we had chicken tonight.
We did, but it was fully cooked.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we're fine. No salmonella here.
So, for overall in the game, I do think this is an enjoyable game. I have a lot of fun with it. I think it has a lot of replayability. Each character plays different, each boss plays different. It does scale a little bit based off of player count, because like the monsters and the bosses and some of the like traps and stuff like that will have different powers or strengths depending on how many characters you're playing as. I don't know if it like necessarily scales, because like some of the bosses I noticed, like when you're like at a 1 player count it's like 25 health, but then like at a 4 player count it goes up to like 60. So like it seems like it's a little bit unbalanced there, but there might be a reason for it. If you're playing at a 1 player count, you're probably likely to bring a really heavy hitter character. Yeah. Where if you're playing at 4 player count, you're gonna have some more support characters. So not every character is gonna be able to be a big heavy hitter. So it might scale okay. It's just looking at the numbers. Made me kind of curious to see how it actually scales. Yeah,
it's. I have to believe. I assume they did enough playtesting on this that they figured out that this all works out good. But like, when I the first couple games I played was solo, and so yeah, like the boss has less health. Although yeah, when you add a character, it doesn't like double the health. It just sometimes it does. Some of the monsters it doesn't. But there are some things that happen where it's like it does this much damage to the party, and you can split that up however you want. But that doesn't scale. So if you're playing as 1 player, that means you're the party. You're taking all that damage. Wow, that's and look again. There's a lot of variables here, so I can't say that is necessarily unfair. Like, this might all work out. I mean, you only have 1 person you ever have to worry about healing, so maybe you're not going down the morale track as fast, so maybe it all works out fine, but it is kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. You're like, Jesus, if I had even 1 other person, I would take half this damage, and this is pretty severe damage. It's there.
Yeah.
But I kind of said this in game, but I'm just going to reiterate. I was very blown away by how thematic this game is.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that I feel like I went on this very specific adventure, and because of where we're fighting this boss and what kind of area that boss in, or how that boss acts, like we experience things in this very certain way. Super cool. That is 100% my jam. We talked about how there's like support characters and et cetera, et cetera. Like I play that bard, and appropriate to bards, a little bit good at everything, but not super good at anything. And so like with him, like you were playing as someone very fighty, I think, in that game, or pretty fighty.
He is fairly. That was the game that I think, if I remember correctly, that's the game that I was the farmer with.
Oh, you were the farmer. Yeah, that was kind of an interesting. He had kind of like a damage over time kind of situation. But I think he would be much better suited to a 4-player game, and now or more players, because he could fill in like where he needs to a little bit here and there. What I wish they had in the rulebook, and they do have a breakdown of each character and how they play, so you could read all that, but I wish there was like a simple chart that said, these are your fighty characters, these are your jack of all trades, these are your support people, whatever. Yeah. And then this character is tough at 1 or 2 players, but good at this, some way to break that down. Yeah. So you would just know, and I mean, you could still pick them, and I wouldn't say like don't ever try that, but that way okay, if you're doing this, we better get this one to handle it. And then if you play through the boss and it's pretty easy, you might say, well, all right, let's try out these kind of more quirky characters, and maybe we could take them that way too. But I think what they want you to do is really figure out that on your own, and then figure out, and you play against a boss, and then alter it for the next time if you didn't win, and try different things, which is fine. But you may not remember this if you go a while between plays, like we often, that's the case for us. It'd be nice if there's like a simple thing you could look at and be like, oh, let's do these because, we want to have a better chance. It'd be a good way to just know how you're adjusting the difficulty for the game you're playing.
Yeah, and each character does have a character summary card, and you can kind of read that and get a feel if they're a fighter, support, defense, if they have some kind of weird, quirky rules. You can at least get a sense from each of the character cards. So, I think a chart would be nice. I don't necessarily think it's necessary, but it is something to kind of keep in mind. And I don't think it necessarily needs that chart, but it is something to kind of keep in mind that I think there's definitely characters that will play well against bosses and some characters that are really not suitable for some bosses. And, definitely if you're at a lower player count, but I think even if you're at a 4-player count, I think there's some characters that just aren't going to do well against certain bosses. But that's can be part of the fun of playing the game, is figuring out what combination works well.
Yeah, and I should probably state we didn't get to play at a higher player count than 2. I wish we could have. It's just scheduling, you know what I mean? And I'm also really bummed because we're getting to this review like after there was a second Kickstarter for like a expansion that had another like character or 2 and boss or 2, depending on what level you pledged at. I wanted to get it out before then, but life happened to us in a real big bunch of ways, so we just couldn't do it. But you could still get the base game, and I'm sure there might even be a late pledge for that expansion. I'm not certain, but it wouldn't shock me. So anyway, here we are with this. But yeah, I really, all my complaints, I feel like, for the most part, are with the components, which again, it's not that it's just weird choices, I think. Yeah. It's not like they're bad, it's just that weird choices. It's just weird choices. So with that discussion about how like some characters are better than others, like how did you feel about the difficulty? Because I know like the nature of how this game works, these bosses in some way or another are likely to just whittle you down as you go. Or at least that's what they're trying to do. And you're trying to manage that, and you may or may not do well at it. Did you like that feeling, or did you feel like it was too hard or frustrating, or I don't know? Like, what do you think about that? I think
it's gonna really just depend on the characters that you choose and the type of player that you are too. Like I tend to like to be either very fighty or very defense, and kind of have a little bit more. I don't really like having the like. I sometimes I think it kind of depends on the game we're playing too. Like there's like if we're playing like an Arkham horror game, I like being a little bit more well-rounded. But when it's like when it's like a really heavy fighting game like this is, especially when dice are involved, where there's some luck in it. I tend to, and it's co-op. I like to kind of be a little bit more like, I know going in I'm going to be a fighting character or a support character. Like I like knowing what I'm going to be trying to focus on while I'm playing the game. And I think that there's some characters that are really good for that. There's other characters that are going to be kind of bad for that. So I think this game is going to be a lot of playing different characters and finding out which characters fit for your gameplay preference. So, for me, it didn't bother me because you do have choices. Especially if you're at full health, you have like 6 choices of different powers that you can try and use, and really more than that because each card has 2 powers. The thing that for me with this game is that I can see kind of almost a lot of like analysis paralysis with this game, because it's really easy to roll your dice and then be like, and then you're not just focusing on what you can do. It has a lot to do with what the other players can do too. Like even if you're not a support, like especially if you're have a support player, but even if you don't have a support player, it can still be like, okay, well, I rolled these dice. I can for sure get this power to go off that's going to do this much damage, but I'm also really close to getting this power off that's going to do a lot more damage. So how much damage are the other players going to be doing? Because can I get away with just doing that, what I know for sure is going to go off? Or should I risk re-rolling and trying to get this higher damage?
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because like when I read the rules for this and realized that the basic mechanic is essentially the same as dice throwing, which is I consider a pretty light game. And, you're just rolling your dice and trying to match them up with your powers. I was like, and it doesn't have like the deck of cards that dice throwing does. I'm like, oh, this is going to be like lighter dice thrown essentially, but co-op. And it's because of the decisions you have to make and how you want to, especially if you're playing multiplayer, how you're going to coordinate that with your team. It's a lot thinkier than I expected. It's like learning to play it. I don't think it's hard, but there's a lot of complexity in how you choose to approach things. I would say. Yeah,
if you like Dice of Thrones, I think you will, but want a game that's a little bit more heavy. I think this is going to be a really good game for you.
Yeah, for sure. And when I was talking about the difficulty, when we one of the bosses we fought was the Verminologist. And he was like this mutated amalgam of a bunch of weird creatures together. And like most of the fights you had, or even like a lot of the traps were like just swarms of this or that and rats. And he was really good at, he was whittling down your morale. He was taking away powers, taking away dice. He was rough. And there was a partway through that where I was like, oh, this is so freaking oppressive and like difficult. And I was really frustrated for about a minute. And then I was like, wait, that is exactly how this dude's supposed to feel. That is the whole point, because every time you read the flavor text, it's like, oh, you've been struggling and you're worn down and you can barely handle from all the scratches from the swarms. You're getting so frustrated, you're losing your sense of hope. All this other stuff. It's like, Jesus. And I guess I could have still let it bother me, but at the same time, I'm like, that's what this son of a bee is doing. Like, that's what he's doing. And he's making me actually feel that way.
Yeah.
He's actually making me feel that way. And it's not only affecting me personally, but it's also on the board because my morale is going down. And now I can't sing my song because I was a bard at the time because I lost it. And now it's going to be even harder because I lost my die. So, like, I guess I don't feel like singing this song right now. I'm too frustrated. I don't know what it was. Wowie. That's my. I like honestly like that boss, which felt frustrating at a point. Like a second later, I turned around and I was like, "Oh, no! This is actually genius. This is genius. They did exactly what he does to you." I think the people who designed this are tainted by the corruption, frankly. No, but mind blown when I realized what had happened there.
Yeah. So for me, I did enjoy playing this game a lot. Honestly, the components bother. I'm a very numbers, logistics person, and so the component choices of this game ended up bothering me a lot. Yeah, the size of the cards, it makes it so that putting it out on the table is going to be difficult. Storing it's going to be difficult. All these choices made it so that the cost of the game is more than it needs to be. And so all that stuff together, even though I really enjoy the game, and if I was scoring it just off of playing the game, I would give it an 8. But the logistics and all that, all the choices that they made in the logistics of the game bother me enough that I'm going to give it a 7. Just because of it, I keep going back to that, and it makes it so that I have a really hard time separating those two things.
Yeah, well, it says a lot that was such a big point of discussion after our first play that we both enjoyed, or our first play together that we both enjoyed, and then we said, yeah, that's fine, and then we talked about components for half hour, if not more. I don't remember, but I don't have a specific it knocked it down this much exactly. It does affect my overall view just because it's a pain in the ass. If I could put this in a bag of holding and whip it out when I needed it and it'd be okay, I guess. But I don't know where I'm going to put that thing. I really don't. It's just difficult. So, and again, there's ways to avoid it. There's ways they could have done to avoid it. And I looked at the Kickstarter. I knew that it was big cards, I'm sure. And I just didn't realize what that would mean for everything when you put it all together.
Yeah. It sounds good on paper, but then when the practicality of it comes into play,
Yeah. As cool as it is to see that big art, it's not like you wouldn't be able to see it if they put it on, like, a card half that size. Mm-hmm. Like, you'd see it fine. I'm certain.
Yeah.
Now, they better not also shrink the size of the dice things on the... those...
And that's the part of it, too, is, like, because it's like, I know, like, some people are probably thinking, well, like, if if you're complaining about that, like, if they were smaller cards, it would be a lot harder to read and so that. There was, on the side where there's actually stuff that you need to read, there's a lot of extra space around the borders, so there definitely is the option of having those cards be smaller.
Yeah, I think so too. But, as you may have gotten the impression of, I really enjoy the game a lot. I love how thematic it is. I love how I feel like I'm taking on a really different adventure, even though, like I said, I think, a lot of the mechanics probably are the same in a lot of cases, but they're in different proportion depending on the beast you're going against or the whatever. And the way the flavor text, brings you into that and make you realize, oh yeah, the way that we're dealing with this and the things we have to put up with are perfect for what we're trying to go after here. That's amazing to me. And even if it was just that many heroes and not as many bosses, and I still was like, well, okay, but we can still try all these different heroes, it'd still be pretty cool. But the amount of different combinations you can have here to try out, even though some of those combinations are probably a bad decision, depending on your player count and the boss you're going against. I love that kind of thing. It's so great to me. This is a game I hope, like I said, they just did an expansion on Kickstarter, and I hope they keep them. I know the expansion did really good. I just don't remember how far across the finish line this one went. Yeah. I hope they keep supporting it because it's got a lot to it. It's a fun game. It does have those flaws. It could be possible that, when I was talking about the Verminologist and how it was kind of making me feel, some people might not get past that and decide, oh, but it's actually cool because that's the point. They might be like, yeah, but I still hate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Understandable. And some people might fight some bosses and be like, I don't like that. And depending on the proportion of those that you feel that way about, I could see someone maybe not being excited about that game or that fact. But I see the beauty of the whole and how it all intermingles into this fantastic game that I'm going to give an 8. It could be that if they'd done different things with the components, it would be a 9. I'm not sure because they didn't, so it's hard for me. Like, maybe I'd look at that and be like, no, now it's too small. I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't think so. But my overall feel, when I take all these things into account, it's an 8. And I am thrilled to play this any old time. There's still, heroes and villains that we haven't gone against that I would really love to try. And I think it's a great one. I don't know if hordes of people are talking about this game or not, but I feel like if there's a lot of people talking about Dice Throne, which is great, by the way, fantastic game. People who like co-ops should be talking about this. They should know about this game, for sure. Mm-hmm. It's good. So I'm giving it an 8. So that's where we're at. We have an 8 and a 7. Pretty good scores overall. If you have any questions about this, by the way, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'll do what I can. And, let me know. Are you interested in this game now? Are you going to seek it out? I know it's available through their website. I'm not sure if it's available through other retail sources or if it's going to be. I'm not certain about that. But you can get it through their website. I'll try to put a link in the description as well, just so you can go hunt it down. So, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit like and subscribe and click the little bell icon so you can know about the next time we put out a video. Otherwise, look forward to see you all around the table again at All Games New and Old.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi everyone, we now have a merch store, so please help support our channel and check it out.
Yeah, these games are very expensive, as you know. We'd also love to upgrade our equipment one day so we can get better quality video too. And sadly, that all just takes a bunch of money. But this is a great way you can help us. We have all kinds of t-shirts in different colors with both the classic All Games New and Old logo and the AGNO for Everyone logo.
We also have sweatshirts like the zip-up hoodie or the classic hoodie.
And we have all kinds of items you can have around the house, like the water bottle or coffee tumbler.
We also have pint glasses and mugs and a few other things.
Yeah, so go on there. There's a lot of different colors for a lot of this stuff. So go check it out. See if anything appeals to you. Hopefully it does, and hopefully you'll help us out. We'd really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Because that'll sound like a bloop bloops all over the place. Yeah, I don't want to get bloop bloops everywhere. Such a mess. Ugh.
That sounds like a you problem.
It's a big me problem. I was very confused for a second.
It's okay. You normally are.
How dare you? I'm gonna edit a picture over your face.
Game.
Here's the game.
Yeah. I'll just put the actual game box in front of you. That'll cover you entirely. It's ridiculous. Size of that box. Good God. Yeah, I bet you people are gonna say, they got a doggy. I'm gonna watch that show with the doggy. Oh, shut up. I'm trying to do a video. I'm trying to do it now. That's for Catharsis. If you enjoyed that video, you might also like this one.
Or this one.
If you like any of our videos, what you should do is click this little button to subscribe so you'll know about the next time we put out a video.
We'll see you around the table.
Bye.
Bye.